Coming up, the New Jersey Devils are 5-2-1. So why is the fan base demanding that changes get made? We dive in on the current stats, the current areas that they need to improve, and why everyone should just go ahead and relax. Yes, it is DPL, the Devil's Puck Luck podcast, where we are your host. Over here, Adam Armbrecht. Over there, Danny McDonough. And we're talking about the New Jersey Devils. What we always like to do, Danny, a little 8-game check-in. That's where we said we wanted to draw the benchmark, but it really comes down to just wanting to look at some of the key areas for this team where they played well, things that have improved. And I have a player that I need to get to here, certainly along the way, but also just the fan base and whether or not expectations have maybe gotten people a little bit worked up to the point of saying we need to make changes before we've even gotten 10 games into the season.
That's what happens, right? High expectations. You expect 8-0 results right away in 8 games, and obviously that's not going to happen. So, it's great to have some adversity early on in the season, and we have adversity, but we're 5-2-1. So let's remember that. It's we're solid in the standings right now. It's very early to even look at and think about standings, but I know all fans do, no matter what, it's going to happen. Listen, Devils have things to clean up, but overall, we got a good record. We're taking the right steps. And when Jack Hughes doesn't get a point, we still get a victory. I like that.
The New Jersey Devils are second in the league right now with 4.13 goals per game, only behind the LA Kings. They are a team that has been riding high in a lot of different statistical categories, obviously, including power play percentage, right? We lead the league, 42.4%. Now, we know that the PK could certainly improve for the Devils so far this season. The 75th percentile is going to put them below the middle of the pack in that category. But you mentioned it there. Expectations are high. We understand that. But didn't we coming out of the preseason, one of the big things was, hey, power play looks good. That's what's going to help this team win more games than they did a year ago and be able to take advantage of some of the speed factor that they force opposition to take penalties. They're doing it. Great. Box checked. Other areas that we were concerned with, defensive responsibility, especially with some young players, Luke Hughes being chief among them, and then goaltending. And the goaltending has not been perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Akira Smith has struggled, and I think Vitek has inside of games shown you stretches of real brilliance and standing on his head, and then had some bad performances, but nothing has jumped out to either you or I to say this isn't necessarily far off of expectations.
No, I think we just have to relax a little bit when it comes to the goaltending and let them get into their stride of full season play, right? It's 8 games. It's such a small sample size, 60-40 with the splits with Akira and Vitek. Vitek had a bad game, but he came back against the Wild. He made some really, really great saves. You can argue that third goal that went in at the end of the third period there that he should have had going through the 5-hole. But listen, I think we dominated the Wild in most aspects of that game. I know it was a 4-3 game, but I felt like we controlled play for most of the game, which is what you want to see. There's some hiccups defensively. We know the hiccups. We know Brendan Smith had by far his worst game as a Devil this year. Luke Hughes, man, Luke Hughes is taking strides forward, and you're seeing the development of his game. And right now, I would argue that he is the best rookie in the league for what he brings to the table. The power play you talk about, it's lights out. This is a power play that I think we're going to remember for a long time, seasons to come, that, it is phenomenal to see. And Luke Hughes is benefiting from it. Watching him with his brother tape to tape, in the offensive zone on the power play and how smooth the transitions are is awesome. And you can see, we talked about it probably in game 4 or 5, how Luke Hughes is like, what is he doing on these entries as a quarterback in the power play? You keep doing the same thing, and opposition is going to figure it out. But, you see him take a little bit more initiative to develop what he wants to do on the blue line quarterback in that power play. Mm-hmm. It's a breath of fresh air. We knew Luke Hughes, his offensive abilities were going to shine. And I think defensively, he's played a lot stronger in the last few games as well.
Yeah, and again, first full season for him. A lot of other young players, guys, Kevin Ball, we want to see him take the strides forward here, and he's had some really nice moments, and he's had some games where you said, hey, a little bit more from you. But it's like all these guys we talk about, full season, Luke Hughes, you got a guy I want to get to here in Alexander Holtz in a second. Before we do that, though, friends, I want to go ahead and tell you about our other friends over at DraftKings. That's because that the NFL season is going strong, and DraftKings Sportsbook is custom with an offer that's even stronger. Bet just $5 on any game this week and score $200 instantly in bonus bets. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can also take advantage of a sweetener bet every game day throughout October. And as that wraps up, they're going to do the same thing for you in November. You know that if you got it on the Jets Giants action over the weekend, my goodness, what a mess. But for Jets fans, you covered the spread, you got the dub, and your season still matters. Get in on the action and the game day greatness. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code
THPN.
New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets when they bet $5 on the NFL. That's promo code
THPN.
You got there. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit www.100gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 7369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hills Casino and Resort. Licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles. 21 age varies by jurisdiction. Void in our friends to the north. Ontario, Canada. Bonus expires 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gambling resources. So I thought, Danny, as we talk about this team in the early season, they're wrong, that Alexander Holtz is actually a good reminder of why things have gone well for the Devils early. If you had told me, the guy that it was an advocate for Alexander Holtz and said maybe he should be on that second line pairing, that after 7 games, and actually before that, that he would be playing on the bottom line. You go, oh boy, what's happened? What has gone horribly wrong? And how soon are we going to hear Alexander Holtz is being sent down? But instead, in through growing pains as well, with Timo Meier and his early struggles, right? With having the Jack Hughes, Toffoli, and Jesper Battline be absolutely electric, but understand adjustments need to be made. Now McLeod is getting pushed up, and he's playing center. You've had a couple of small injuries, Palat along with Bratt. You've seen some of the classic Lindy Ruff adjustments. And to end up with Alexander Holtz down on the 4th line, at times playing with different players along the way here, but Tierney and Bastian, and say, oh, he actually can be a playmaker for us and create a dynamic on that 4th line that you want to introduce. This is great to me. Like, I'm rejoicing that Alexander Holtz has value to this roster and is not playing on one of the top 2 lines. I did not think that that was going to be a feasible outcome for this team.
Yeah, it goes back to depth. It goes back to just our strength and our numbers when it comes to depth and the players that we have. He's a young kid that you knew he was going to be very good offensively, has a quick shot, gets that open ice. And we always talked about his defensive capabilities, and he's done that. He's done that. He's been okay with his defensive capabilities. But listen, he's adjusting on each line that he plays on, and I think that he kind of knew that going into the start of the season when he played on the second line in preseason, went down to the 3rd line, and then was juggled down to the 4th line. I've said it to you from the jump. I think that you have a 1A, 1B line with your top 2 lines, and then it's basically a 2A and 2B, with your 3 and 4 lines. Your 4th line is going to be your heavier hitters. Obviously, it's going to be your line that you're hoping is going to forecheck extremely well. But our 3rd line's been doing that as well. So it's I know it seems like it's a demotion, and I say this a lot. I don't think it's really a demotion. I really think that Lindy Ruff goes into it saying, I want to find the best pairing for each player that's going to complement each other to continue to do what we need to do to win games. So I'm giving Lindy Ruff the benefit of the doubt. I understand fans are pissed off that basically they think that he's getting set up to fail. I understand that whole point. But if Holtz keeps playing the way he's playing, he's going to be all right. And what we talked about in the beginning of the year, if he's consistent, he's going to be a 15-goal scorer. And we said that 15 to 20-goal scorer maybe. And we said that'll be a successful season for him. If he has 35 points, I'm happy if he's playing on the 3rd and 4th line and he's contributing to this team. Do I think that he has a ceiling where he can definitely improve? Yeah, I don't think he's near his ceiling at all. However, we have to be realistic as fans that he might not get that the way this roster is constructed. He might not be a top 1 or 2 line guy, and we got to accept that. I think that, fans are going to continue to say it, like, let's get him up on the top 2 lines, give him a shot. It's just not going to happen. I don't think it's going to come to fruition in the next, dozen games. So I'm happy with what he's doing. I know you're happy with what he's doing too. And, we went back to when Lazar and Holtz kind of switched lines. Lazar got promoted because he was playing so well. And I know it looked like a demotion for Holtz, but it wasn't because he played well with McLeod that game. That was the game before the Wild.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, we've seen a lot now pair there. McLeod has come up, obviously, with Nico Heischer being day to day, and I would like to talk. We can touch on that. It'll get both riled a little bit here to close out the episode as we wait for the next games coming up here. A few days off for the Devils after the Wild matchup, obviously. But I think to your point, if it was performance based, I'd be more concerned. For instance, Timo Meyer got benched, right? Lindy Ruff said we need him to be better. There's expectations and much higher expectations for him.
Mhm.
He would have. Lindy Ruff doesn't care. I think that's the example. He
Yeah, he
sat
does.
down Timo Meyer coming off of signing an 8-year extension. So if you're not performing, I'm gonna communicate it to you. And Timo took the responsibility for that. Likewise with Alexander Holtz. If he had been sat down, it would have been because of performance. This is
Yeah.
just a product of what's happened here. McLeod being elevated, I think, is the combination of some injuries, obviously, but then he's been playing consistently. And you and I go back to last playoffs where we said I think this guy has a little more of a ceiling than we realized, and it gives you a flexibility. Lazar playing well early in the season has mattered. Dawson Mercer, in spite of the calls potentially from a small, we would assume, segment of the Devils fan base that he should be traded here early in the season to provide you some other depth or get you a goalie or do this or that. All of these things, you go list it makes it hard to sit here and say for any one player, Alexander Holtz included, oh, well, you should be here or you need to play there. I think it's about combinations, as you mentioned with Lindy Ruff, finding the best ways to make this team play good
Yeah.
hockey. And oh, by the way, 5-2-1, 5-2-1 while still figuring a lot of things out.
The Dawson Mercer thing, it's tough, right? Because he hasn't produced offensively. He's done other
Mhm.
things that are very good on the ice. He's
Yeah.
contributed defensively, forechecked well. Made
And
some
needs
great
to play
saves.
better. And it does need to play better. It's not, it can be a both and.
He's also snake bit a little bit. It kind of reminds me of what happened with Eric Hall at the beginning of last year, how he couldn't buy
Yeah.
a goal. Dawson Mercer's in the spot where he could have cleaned up some goals, and I think just puck luck has not been in his favor at all. There was a play against the Wild. He was in front of the net, and it was a great save by
Yep.
Fleury. You know what I mean? It's you tip your cap, and you just keep moving. You keep pressing on. Dawson Mercer will be fine. It's a contract year, granted. This is going to help us potentially if he's not up near that 30 goal mark. But I think he's still going to be. Listen, he's going to score goals. He's going to get points. It's very young season. I don't want people to start flipping on Mercer. Now, but just because he hasn't produced goals, we know what he's capable of, and he will get there. And for McLeod, stepping in for Nico, I think is a huge thing. But you saw last game, the one thing that the Devils struggled with, and they usually win this minus game one, is faceoffs. The Wild were
Yeah.
ahead in faceoffs by a slim margin, granted, but Devils were dominating faceoffs, with Nico in the lineup. So you saw that the Wild had a little bit of that advantage. And you're going to see that for the next few games, I think, because you're going to see some rotation with guys taking faceoffs now that McLeod is looking like to be that second line center. So that's the one area I think we're going to really miss Nico, and especially the gritty aspect, getting into the dirty areas, forechecking, neutral zone play. You're going to miss Nico a lot.
And let's go up here in a second here, off ice and out of bounds, because there was something that went on there in that last game that really got underneath Danny's skin.
Yes.
Devil try a while back into that one. That's something that we want to see them clean up, right? You're up 4-2, go ahead and bury them. Get that open net goal to go ahead and wrap some of these games up. Again, ultimately, as long as you're getting more wins than losses, it's all good. We'll dive into that in just 1 second. After, though, I tell you that it may be too early to start decorating for the holidays. I don't know. You got Halloween now, you got Thanksgiving, you got Christmas, you got New Year's. There's always a holiday, though, but it's never too early to start taking care of your holiday shopping. Why not take care of somebody that you really care about and go ahead and get a crowd pleasing opportunity like the Raycon products? Oh, baby. We told you about the earbuds going back. They've got a whole selection of different things that you can choose from. Raycon is the first made name for themselves in audio space with products like everyday earbuds, that's what we've told you about, known for delivering high quality throughout their thoughtful features, 32-hour battery life, and a perfect in-ear fit for all-day wear and lasting comfort. And in this past year, they expanded their entire business with the introduction of Raycon Home and Raycon PowerTech. Their 5-star review Magic 180 cable allows you to charge iOS, micro USB, and Type-C devices 8 times faster with 100-watt power delivery. Oh, baby, that's juicy. It's kind of like the Devils offense. They can deliver power and speed with authority. 100-watt. That's what I'm going to do from now on. I'm referring to the Devils henceforth as 100-watt power delivery. Their faucet filter ultra filters with a water in your tap against chlorine and heavy metals. It's a must-have for ensuring the water that you use to wash your face and brush your teeth is actually clean. Raycon is known for delivering high quality and thoughtful features at half the price of other premium tech brands. It's no wonder that their products have racked up 10,000 live reviews. To get everyone in on the holiday shopping spirit a bit early, Raycon is currently offering 20% off everything on their site with select products up to 50% off as well. So beat the crowds and save now. Trust me, you do not want to miss out on the Raycon's early Black Friday sale. Hurry now to buyraycon.com/THPN to get 20% off, 50% off on site-wide products. That's buyraycon.com/THPN to score up to 50% off on Raycon products. Buyraycon.com/THPN. Baby, I am thinking about it. You may see me on the website. It's going to be good.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
thought you were gonna tell me to say the code THPN. I was ready. I knew it was gonna be in there, but it's all right.
I didn't want to throw you off, and needless to say, I was alone on all the great deals over on Raycon.com. Be sure to check it out. Now, the other thing that we wanted to touch on here, this is always fun for me because one of the things that you and I get to is like old school hockey versus new school hockey. Typically, when things go on, Danny he'll use a phrase like, that's the modern NHL is, and I may prefer the old school mentality a little bit. And there's times when you want that. And a big talking point has been protecting your players. So Nico Hischier, who is day-to-day with an injury now, took a wallop of a hit. And then there was what is referred to, what's the official league term for a player that instigates a little bit of retaliation and tries to get in a bit of scrapping. Break down the player and the number of penalty minutes that they spent in the box before we get a little rat-tat-tat going.
Yeah, no, I love Palat stepping in for Nico. You want to see that right away. I love that Bratter.
We all said, thanks,
yeah.
Palat.
And Bratter said it after the game. It's like, that's what you're supposed to. Well, he said it during the intermission. That's what you're supposed to do. We want to make sure Nico's okay. Palat stepped up right away and did what he needed to do to protect his captain. I love to see it. I understand instigator penalties. I get it. But for Palat to be serving 17 minutes of penalty time for a fight that wasn't even a fight, number one. 2-minute minor, so then it's 4-on-4 hockey after Nico gets, a penalty on what was a major penalty, obviously, there too on Clifton. So, and then 10-minute misconduct. Where to me, it's where is it going to end, right? I understand you want to give a minor penalty for instigating, whatever. We'll deal with the 4-on-4 hockey because you stood up for your guy and it's 4-on-4, even strength hockey. We're better on 4-on-4 and 3-on-3 in overtimes anyway, as you see. To get a 10-minute misconduct for a player that's on your top two lines in Palat is absolutely ridiculous. I hate the rule. I understand the 2-minute minor. I understand it completely. 10-minute misconduct to me is silly. I think the NHL needs to look at this after the season. Players Association needs to figure it out. They got to figure it out. You want to give a 2-minute minor? Cool. But I think you can understand where I'm at with you give a 10-minute misconduct there when there's no egregious like retaliation where he's like cross-checking him extremely hard and intent to injure, anything like that. Paul literally went up to him, dropped his gloves, and engaged. That was it. It wasn't anything egregious where another player could get hurt, So the 10-minute misconduct thing to me is just silly. It's always been silly. I get that the NHL is really trying to eliminate more fights, trying to eliminate injuries, things like that. But, it's always been a subjective thing, and you and I go back and forth with it. It's very difficult for officiating in any sport to be subjective because then there's a fine line and it's going to be favoritism maybe, and then you're going to see some missed calls and some nonsense calls that no matter what fan base you're with, you're going to complain about. But I think the NHL really needs to go back and look at this and go back to where the referees need to make that judgment call if it's an instigating penalty.
Okay, so here's where it is, because this is less sexy than I wanted it to be. I wanted this to be a real rowdy thing. If you had been there for the text exchange that Danny and I had,
I was mad.
This guy was fully off the rails. He's screaming about dirty hits. He's saying, this guy didn't even do anything. How dare they? They should be banishing this instigator call altogether from the league. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. It's insane.
I hate it.
Now cooler heads prevail, and who cares really? So here's what I agree. Here's what I'll say. Two parts. So the one is 17 minutes it is insane. Now I think saying 2-minute minor versus if it ended up being totality 5 minutes that he ends up in the box, right? A major of some kind. Okay, right. That might be splitting the difference, and you can feel comfortable about that. But here's the part that's more interesting. I don't think that's where I think the adjustment needs to get made. Going back to the subjective referee perspective, that's not something that the NHL or any major sport wants to do. It's why these things are so black and white, because otherwise, then what happened in that instance? Let's say that they had it as it's going to be 10 minutes of penalty time. Let's just arbitrary, right? 10 minutes of penalty. Oh my gosh. Then what you would have done in that game was go, I just watched earlier tonight in another game. It was the exact same thing. They didn't send him. Why is he sending him? And it would open up way too much gray area where the referees now are responsible for answering the questions. Oh, why did you do that? Why did you not? The problem the NHL has had here is they wanted to correct and they went a little bit overboard in this correction where now they go, hey, that's the letter of the law. You did it. You tried to instigate. You go to the box and you go, yeah, but it's a period and a half later. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
Right.
it's the misconduct. It's the fact you get a 10-minute misconduct. It's just silly to me.
Yes. Yeah.
And I understand if you want to just make it blanket across the league, it's a 2-minute minor for instigating, whatever. And if it's egregious penalty and someone goes after your captain, after one of your superstars, then the refs can make a decision if it's going to be a double minor or just minor, on whoever committed
That's
that
true
penalty.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
And then they can make it, about what they saw on the ice. And you have to make it mandatory if you have an instigating penalty for 2 minutes on the player. Fine, so be it. But the fact that you're getting 10-minute misconducts and you have some of your star players, Palat is a star. Let's call it what it is. He's playing very well. He's on your top two lines. Even if he's on the top three lines, it doesn't matter. You're losing a key guy that's going to contribute not just 5-on-5, but in special teams. For an extra 10 minutes. Yeah, I just hate it, man.
Yep.
And I get it. Like I understand how the NHL has progressed and what they want to do with their offensive capabilities, their superstars in the league. I understand where the progression has gone, and I love it. I love offensive hockey. You and I always go back and forth. It's like I'm probably going to have an ulcer by the end of this Devils season if we keep playing games like this. But
Danny's not going to make it. This is going to be a solo podcast sooner than later.
But it's exciting. It's exciting hockey. And it's the NHL has slowly gone more toward that, where you're going to see games that we've been seeing for the first 8 games, especially the way the Devils are structured right now. We'll talk about defense before we end this episode, but it's just tough for me. I get super frustrated as a fan knowing that there's 17 minutes of penalty time for Palat, after Clifton took a major penalty, against Nico Hischier.
And that's the other part of this too, more than anything, because okay, hey, Palat, you drop the gloves, you want to go, he doesn't, okay, and then costing you, right? I think more than anything as well for the NHL, it's hard because these Nico Hischier hits, by the way, some of them have felt like, well, were they trying to hurt him? There's been I probably half a dozen times in this season already where Nico just stops so quickly and sharply on a dime that it sometimes just ends up in a bad spot, and the speed of the game.
Yeah. Something else that you and I that we've talked about. Nico Hischier, we see him as the player he is at being a Devils fan. We see him in a certain light. He's a pest to other teams. He's a very
right. Yeah.
He's a pest to other teams. He gets under players' skin. They just get annoyed with him because he's so gritty. He finds the loose puck. He gets to those dirty areas. He's going to crash behind the boards. He's going to get in front of the net into the blue paint. And players get annoyed by that. So I think that it's strange that he's always targeted, but I think that we need to see that he is that type of player, not a dirty player, but he's a pest. He's a pest to other teams that Nico Hischier is going to be a playmaker if you're the opposition and you want to put a body on him. And Nico Hischier sometimes can't absorb those hits from those bigger guys, but that's the player he is. He's a very good player that serves in a very, very important role for the Devils, and I think opposition is really seeing that. So I think it's going to continue to happen. I don't want to sit here and say like, now that Palat stuck up for Nico a little bit, that some teams are going to back off. No teams are going to back off. You saw Jack take a really big hit in that game too. You're going to see our superstars get targeted with big hits, and that was a clean hit on Jack too. So, we need to step up to the cause of what's happening. If it means we take a penalty for instigating, so be it. I just hate that 10-minute misconduct so much.
Well, see, and this is where I come back to it, right? Because again, and we talked about this previously of like there is a threshold, there's a line you get across, and then you just need somebody to hit somebody because you feel like your team is getting abused. But the Devils' best way to retaliate is on the scoreboard because they're built to destroy teams with their speed, destroy teams on their power play. That being said, I think the biggest thing to tie a bow on this is the NHL needs to figure out, well, what's the more aggressive version of this on hits like that? Not that they're even always dirty hits or otherwise, but there has to at some point be a punitive response to that. And the issue there is what the league is progressed towards: more open ice play, faster rating, scoring. But when those big hits happen, it's a fine line between taking away what is the soul of hockey, right? It is about these big hits. And that's where I think they need to strike this balance. So we'll see where it goes from there. But it was, again, I'm going to start doing green shots of the text threads that we have in game sometimes because they are tremendous and they need to blur a lot of profanities.
Yeah, it's when you're a fan for so long, and this too. the emotion of it, number one, seeing one of your best players down like that and taking a tough.
But it's so instantaneous though. Like I
I'm
could tell you when
wow.
Danny and I are not together and we're both watching the game, I could tell you I should start doing this. I should start tweeting out before Danny texts me and go, comes like here comes one because the raw emotion that comes out of you. I mean, that's what it is. It's being passionate, it's being a fan, but it is like it is almost to the second I could be like, oh, here we go. Danny's about to go off. And it's going to take him about 6 minutes to cool
Oh, yeah.
down. The Devil will score a goal. They'll be up 2-0 in the next 4 minutes, but he'll still be, but that hit, the sons of guns, they're going to get it.
Yeah, well, listen, but you know me too. Sometimes I'll be like, "Oh, that's not a penalty," and then we watch the replay back together on an away game. You know, when we're watching, I'm like, "Oh, that's a penalty.
Those are my favorite too. Yeah, those are beautiful.
That's a
The
penalty."
side by sides, one hit on the Devils, one hit on the opposition. Same exact play, not a penalty, but he always comes back to neutral. He always comes back to neutral. The Devils have obviously they played the Wild there as we mentioned. They got that win at home, but now they're going to go on the road, which is a nice big gap between the home and home here. 8 p.m. on Thursday. We'll be back in Thursday, a little deeper preview, but I think the biggest thing here that we'll focus on is going to be that defensive side of the puck here. Some responsibility for the Devils in that side of things, and obviously with the IR stint here for Colin Miller, retroactive back to the 19th. Maybe the worst game, not digging on him here, but Brendan Smith struggling a little bit. It's opening the door where I think the more that this team doesn't close out with authority, especially when they get early goals in games, we're going to start to really zoom these defensive plans and say, hey, at some point we need to be able to rely on you guys to shut the door here, along with goaltending as well.
He let Pat Maroon get under his skin against the Wild. You know, he literally took. He just didn't keep the puck in front of him, Brendan Smith, you know, and he really made some bad plays, the worst I've seen him make in a while, you know, going back to last year too. He made some really bad plays and, you know, just swinging and flailing at a puck when a fourth line guy is behind you is not going to get it done. You know, you're beat like that. He was beat on the boards a few times too. And you know how I've been a defender of some of Brendan Smith's games. You know, I didn't think that he had horrendous games every single game for the 8 games this year, you know, but that was a bad game. You know, and there's no denying that. And Lindy Ruff, unfortunately, had said in his press conference, he goes, "Listen, there's no plans on changing it right now." You know, he loves Brendan Smith for whatever reason. I get that he's a veteran presence. I think, and I would assume,
There's also not a lot of other options either. So that's a part of the thinking is here too right now.
I assume that Brendan Smith has the locker room's ear. I think that he is one of the leaders in the locker room, and I think that goes back to last year too, when Lindy Ruff was talking about that, having that veteran guy talk to your younger players and really help them understand the game. Unfortunately, Brendan Smith is not the better defenseman on the ice than who we have on the ice in our defensive pairings. But, you know, he's probably going to be in the lineup, you know, on Thursday night. It seems like that. You know, I'd love to see Cal Foote get a shot. I'd love for Hataka to come up, you know, when he's healthy, you know, to get a shot. So, you know, as of right now, we just got to roll with it. I think you're going to see the same things from Lindy Ruff until there's something so egregious that you can't play him, you know, and if that means he takes a couple penalties, he's got to come out of the lineup.
Yeah, the striking balance here is, and I think you're right, he can help, experience allows you to help young players like Luke Hughes understand the NHL game a little bit better. At some point, what ends up happening is your skill level and your experience value starts to switch, right? So your on ice value starts to diminish. And the stronger that some of the young players become, is the easier it can be maybe to make a change there. I'm not advocating for that right now. It's just a part of what it is. And as you would always say, he's on the bottom line defensive pairing. We're not talking about a guy on the top pairing. We're not talking about Dougie Hamilton. He needs to do better, or Ball. And I think we will talk about them more. So we'll keep an eye on how it develops. The theme of this episode was Danny has a real tendency to fly off the handle. And also 5-2-1. The Devils are working through some things, but still having success ultimately in the column that matters the most, getting wins. So as we work our way towards that 15 to 20 game sample size, keep checking boxes, hopefully identify areas to improve and start to address them as we move our way forward. Until next time, guys, you get over to YouTube, you turn on the alerts so you know when we're going with all of our videos, on the podcast as well at Devil's Puck Luck. That's the name of the show. I got that one right in my back pocket. Over on Twitter, you get at Danny the Face, Adam Art, and at NJ Devils PL. And then on TikTok, on Snapchat, on Instagram, and on Facebook at Devil's Puck Luck. I stole Danny's line there. Get us out the door with one quick off the top of your head, Danny.
Holy Toffoli with 7 goals, baby. Let's go.
He's been saving that one. We'll catch you next time.